without visits in a branch. Simply download #happiness and visit www.stambicibtc.com for more information. Love music. Love life. Started this journey all alone. Nobody showed you where to go. Everything you learned was on your own. That someday you will grow. And you know it will get better. Nothing can stand in your way.
Your ringer is off. Your ringer is off.
What's that?
Your ringer on your phone is off.
Yeah.
Business trends beyond the headlines. Government policies. Macro indices. Market movement. Business Express. On Smooth.
All right.
98.1.
Studio is live.
In association
Mics are up.
with Stanbic IBTC.
Welcome, Lagos. Thank you so much for joining us. You're listening to Smooth 98.1, and of course, it's time for us to talk business because it's 6:47, so 2 minutes into the show already. Rotus, good morning.
Good morning, Valentine. Good morning, Lagos.
Good morning. How are you feeling about market today?
The market is still down, so
It's still down. Just one day
Still-
left for November to
I
wrap
know,
up.
right? It's negative.
Negative November.
Forget November. It's over.
We have a special guest in from
Dele,
Stanbic
yes,
IBTC.
Dele Akintola of Stanbic IBTC is in with us. Dele, good morning to
Good
you.
morning, gentlemen.
Good morning, Dele. Nice to see you again today. Lagos, join the conversation by sending us messages through WhatsApp. Our WhatsApp number is 0809-444-0981. On YouTube, we're live on Smooth 981 FM. You can leave a comment in the comment section. We'll be very glad to see that. On Twitter, we're at Smooth 981 FM. When you send your messages, please use the hashtag BusinessExpress981.
All right, thank you. So, Lagos, as we said, yesterday market dropped again 0.48%, 31,023.47 points is where we closed. We're now down by 4.4% for the month of November, 18.8 for the year. Key thing here, this is where I want to bring a Dele in. Diamond Bank for the second day in a row was the top loser. Dele, your views from a salesman, the popular newsletter that we all read. You were talking there about how it had dropped to 81 kobo. It's now dropped to 73 kobo. It's now set a new 52-week low. Your thoughts, please, because you were in your newsletter. You were talking about people, your clients, asking you whether or not you're still buyers of the stock or not. Can you give some thoughts as to the company and what's
Okay.
going on?
I mean, I think ultimately Diamond, it's trading now at 0.1 times book, so it's at historical lows.
Right.
I still think that if you look at market sentiment and the way the market is going, it's probably likely that it goes further down. I think at some point, maybe when it gets to that nominal value of 50 kobo, you might say, I'll take a punt in this.
Okay,
right?
okay.
But yeah, it is cheap. The question, I think a lot of questions are being asked by investors as to whether or not it's something we should be playing. But obviously, in recent times, we've seen news of the management of the board leaving. I mean, for me, my job is to worry for my investors. So
Right.
clearly, if you have 4 board members leave prematurely, considering they just started their tenures sometime in July, you start asking the question, what's really going on here?
Right.
We've also obviously seen news of the potential acquisition rumors by Access Bank.
Right.
Again, those are questions. You then say, okay, what's really going on here? Do you want,
Now, there was a question we got from Seni yesterday. Seni, and Seni, in fact, you were partially correct. He or she sent in a question saying, okay, Rotus, if one wanted to take over Diamond with 19 billion, is that possible? And I think the reason why I didn't have the market cap at the time, but the market cap has now fallen to about 18 billion. So theoretically, is that a possibility? Can one take over the shares with 19 billion? I think there's some other things that have to.
If the guy has 19 billion, maybe I need to start banking him.
Yes.
Yeah. Friends, but I mean, effectively, people tend to look at, if you look at valuation, you might want to look at a bank. There's 0.1 times bank, 1 times book. No one's going to sell to you.
Right.
Right. I mean, you maybe look at it at probably 1 times book. So maybe you look at 180 billion, whatever the case is. But yeah, it is very cheap at the moment. And clearly there is. You have to then dimension yourself in terms of how you're looking at the risks, right? I mean, if you look at the Euro bond, that was also downgraded to CCC.
That's the Diamond's Euro bond. Yeah, right.
Yeah, but and it's currently pricing like it's a D downgrade. So it's it's really taking a beating here.
And just to help out our listeners, with price, I mean, it's looking risky, like whether or not they'll be able
so
to pay.
the bonds are being looked at sort of junk bonds. That's the way it's being priced.
Wow.
Yeah, that's not. Well, we'll see what happens. We're waiting for developments in that space. You've already mentioned. Thank you for mentioning the euro bonds. You've also in your newsletter you were talking about. I think it was Access. Redeeming their bonds a little early. As far as that's, I think you're talking about some. You can use GTB as an example last year or so. What's the reason behind that? Why would they be?
So I was just really trying to flag the fact that if you look at the Nigeria banking space and the Eurobond issuance in that space, we're seeing a contraction, right?
Okay.
So you had last year you had GT Bank obviously come to redeem their own bonds. We've seen Access Bank, with the CFO yesterday, saying the same thing. So clearly, that investment space it's looking smaller. Last year we saw Zenith Bank do a $500 million Eurobond,
right.
So and that was very much oversubscribed. But I think when you think about as a bank, if you don't see dollar opportunities or loans where you can deploy those loans, I think the prudent thing is to return those funding, right? And I think ultimately you look at the fact that we're going to into a potentially higher, more expensive dollar regime, right? So if you also feel that the currency might potentially come under pressure, it's rather than sit on gunpowder. The idea is you can return the money today, and then we can have that conversation 6 months down the line to say, can I have those dollars back? But for now, if you don't see the opportunity to deploy, it might be prudent to just and obviously it brings down your cost of funds.
And just to help out our listeners, when you issue a bond, you're borrowing money. When you redeem it early, you're essentially returning what you've borrowed earlier than planned. Okay, now I just want to shift the conversation from the banks to the federal government, because only just last week, or was it 2 weeks ago, they issued another 2.8 billion euro bond. Any concerns, since you've mentioned this, the cost and what the currency could look like if the banks are pulling back? Federal government is still borrowing. So, how do you feel about that? With that,
the federal government is a sovereign, right? So they can also look at their books and say, you know what, we want to change the mix of funding, right? We do a lot of local. We want to switch that and change the mix, which I think was the strategy by the finance minister at the time to just sort of change that mix.
Okay.
Which is what they're doing. Obviously we start worrying about the debt to revenue ratio, which was at about 60%,
right,
at the time before the Eurobond. So you start looking at, what are the implications for servicing of debt going forward. But yeah, ultimately the government, again, the central bank government also has a mandate to protect the currency. So these are some of the, so we can't look at it just in isolation.
Right.
But, the broader picture that they're looking at, and obviously the reasons why they're doing a Eurobond. Yeah.
All right, we'll keep an eye on that. All right, we move from Eurobonds and Diamond Theology. Daily, I think it was on Tech Friday last week or the week before. We thought this thing was over. Teleology. I never get the pronunciation right. But according to the NCC, it says here Teleology yet to take over 9 Mobile and has fulfilled only 2 out of 5.
But I thought they had taken over.
They have. And Daily help us
back
out.
and forth.
It's a back and forth. They're now saying that they haven't fulfilled all their regulatory requirements, so the takeover is incomplete. What I don't know.
We also got the announcement that they've taken over. So
right.
I imagine there's some level of truth to that.
So what sort of ambiguous regulatory requirements are those?
Well, again, if they obviously characterize that the regulator doesn't feel they've met, right?
Okay.
I guess they can give them we expect you to be done with this by X number of dates. But I guess between both regulator and owners, they will decide on. But I think importantly for us is the fact that we speak to banks and banks have said we received part payment for the 9 Mobile loan, right? That, and you saw that yesterday with Access Bank saying they had received about $50 million as well. And a few other banks I've spoken to have also received that credit alert as well.
Okay.
But when I was talking last week about how we look at that loan to the extent that it was a $1.2 billion loan,
right?
600 was directly to the banks, right? The other 600 million was to sort of creditors of 9 Mobile at the time. So we've seen one side of the deal get resolved. What happens to the other side? The question is, even as Teleology, right? We banks have taken a haircut on a loan given to you years ago. Are we willing to lend you money again this time? Right? Because obviously, Teleology would need to borrow money. The question would then be, who would pay for the equipment leasing, working capital requirements. So those are some of the questions that we have around sort of teleology and obviously, the plans going forward.
Is there a chance that we can get our hands on the details of the regulatory requirements that are put forward, given to this kind of companies when they come in?
I'm not sure. We
We'll
can
see.
check.
We'll see. I mean, because
So we're just left to speculate.
Exactly.
Right.
All right. Oil. Let's go to oil prices here. Business day here. Nigeria, Saudi Arabia advanced talks on stabilization of global crude oil price. Well, I mean, according the Minister of Petroleum from the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, Khalid Al Falil, apparently paid Dr. Ibe Kachuku a visit in Abuja. They were talking about what when they talk about stabilizing oil prices. I mean, what do you see them? What are they discussing?
Big boys.
Yeah. Well, we're not that big in terms of production compared to other countries, but really, what do you see?
Stability obviously helps with planning, right? So almost similar to what we're doing with the currency. We want the currency to be at 360, so people can take a view on the market, right? And similarly as well as the government, we are an import-dependent economy. Oil is sort of our primary source of FX. So you want to say, I can make plans for the future at $60 or $70 on an average. But when you see oil goes to 100 and then drops down to 30, that volatility is is what people are I guess is what the market is true. I guess the headline there says stabilization. So we can agree what kind of reasonable price we think oil price, what's that level and where do we want to and what do we need to do to keep it there? But obviously where you then worry is obviously the actions of the US. Where the US has become probably one of the largest oil producers as well.
Right.
The ranking of production significantly. So that again, then you say I just feel that the downside to the oil price is higher today.
We'll see how that goes. Valentine, got any messages from the people? Okay.
We do. Cruz says, what's the real problem with Diamond?
Cruz, it's a long story. We've beaten that story to death.
Paul sent in a message. Paul said, I think Diamond needs to set their corporate governance straight. Things are not looking good. The way it's going, impairments on their loan book would even throw them out of the capital adequacy benchmark by full year because I sense their bad loan books is underprovided for. I see another Polaris bank in Diamond.
Chai.
Dakbo says Uzo Dozier should follow Saraki's footsteps. No.
Dakbo, stop it.
Rainmaker says, hello Rotus, what is the current stop rate for government T-bills? How far with Dangote bonds? How can an individual buy? What is the minimum investment? I like that question.
Dangote did a commercial paper. That was the one I remember. I think their minimum was 50 million. I'll check, but I think it was pretty high.
Hence the individual buying question.
That is a big boy. Stop rates for I think of the 364 is about 14%, I believe. From 90 days to 364, you're looking at between 12 to 14% for Treasury bills.
And then Yinka said, guys, did Diamond Bank beating come before that interview or after? Because it seems that this is the current snow diving is looking like some fellas chilling somewhere and be like, oh yeah, let's
screw them over. That was just bad timing. It was just that interview with Forbes after was just bad timing. I think that's all the time we have for the stories.
We're done.
Dele Akintola of Stanbic IBTC. Thank you so much for joining us today. We appreciate having you. Thanks for your messages as well, everyone out there.
Catch all the latest episodes and the previous episode actually of Business Express. Go to youtube.com/smooth91FM Lagos. Coming up next, we talk about real estate investments. You don't want to miss that. And then 7:30 will be time for Freshly Pressed. Good morning.
Tracks.